Hi, everybody. This is Craig with Out on Film, and welcome back to Out on Film's In Conversations With. And I have to say today, I am absolutely thrilled to have part of the team here behind the film See You Then, which is a beautiful film about women coming together for a night who have a history and a relationship, and we get to see them in all of their humanness and complexity. And with that, I would like to introduce the director, Mari Walker. Thank you for joining us. And Pooya Mohseni, who stars in this film. Thank you both very much for joining us here at Out on Film. Mari, I want to start with you, and I hate to throw a quote back at you, but after I watched the film, I read something and you had in a director's statement about that says, and I'll paraphrase the beginning of it, about growing up trans, you live a life of stolen moments. And when I was watching this film, I felt like you had given Naomi and Kris their moments. And I thought, and I just wanted to ask, just as we started, you know, giving these moments to them, how you found your way to Kris and Naomi, or how Kris and Naomi found their way to you.
I think it was a bit of both. I think we met there somewhere in the middle. I had been wanting to make a feature for so long, a narrative feature, and I had written all these scripts and I was so excited, but you know, they're so huge and elaborate and, you know, over $1 million. So basically it was just looking like a first-time director, somebody who's biracial and trans, just, you know, wasn't going to cut it. And I felt like it would be really behoove me to spend some time really working with actors and learning how to work with actors, and felt like, you know, a chamber piece would be a really great place to start. And at the time, Kristen, you know, our producer and my co-writer was living with me. And so we were both, I think, going through a lot of just life change. She had just gone through a career change. I was just in the process of transitioning. And I think a lot of these questions that are in the film started to sort of come up between us and just in our conversation. And slowly it started to kind of brew and percolate into the story. And then, like all great things, you know, you start writing it and then suddenly like a line will appear and you didn't feel like you wrote it at all and it was the character, and then you fall in love with them and then you feel really bad about ruining their lives, you know.
And Pooya, how, when you first read this, what was your initial reaction to Kris?
I couldn't breathe. Like, I'll be like very honest. When I first read the script, and we can get into how that happened, I read it and I couldn't breathe. It was like the story that I was invested. And, you know, I mean, I was sent basically kind of like a blind script. I had no idea what I was being asked to read. And having read stories about trans characters that are cringeworthy, to say the least,
Yes.
I was like, this person that I don't know is sending me a script from LA. Oh my God, what is this going to be? And then as I read it, I literally had these moments of like, oh my God, what's going to happen? I read it twice. I cried. I was speaking along with these characters, and that was when I knew that I really wanted to. It felt, you know, these people, like they had agency, and I just wanted to be part of it.
So as you say that, you get scripts and you're like, where is this script coming from? And let's just be real, trans representation, you know, has been absent at best and horrific at you know, and it has, and I think so. I want to give you the opportunity to, you know, to the importance of trans representation in front of the camera, behind the camera, you know, and how that informs the depth, the very depth of the story that you're able to tell, or that you want to tell. So Mari, what you know, kind of what does that mean for you to be able to speak your voice in this fashion, in this medium?
Oh, it means the world to me. I mean, I have to make movies. I often joke that I'm like a movie priest. I wake up thinking about movies, and then I spend the whole day thinking about movies and talking about movies and ranting about movies usually. And then I go to bed thinking about them, and I dream about them, and they're my way of self-expression. To be able to make a feature in general is, you know, such a gift. I just wish it wasn't as much of a gift for folks within the community, because we just don't have enough of that representation. And I do think representation behind the screen is extremely important. You know, because oftentimes, most often, you know, they're the people in charge, and they're the people in charge of dictating stories and how they're being told and what elements of communities they're choosing to express. And I think that, you know, even just having somebody as a producer, an executive producer, somebody who has that power, who could just be like, hold on a second, let's take a step back here, and like, let's think about these characters regardless of who they are.
Right.
Everybody deserves equal representation and equal time spent, you know, and making sure that that representation is done properly.
And Pooya, as the performer, I mean, how is it working with someone who is you know, part of, you know, your community, who knows who you are and where you are? And I will say, just from the perspective of like, you're watching this film and I can see how well taken care of you and Lynn are in these intensely emotional and vulnerable scenes. What is it like for you with somebody behind the camera who you can trust so implicitly?
You've been watching our interviews, Kris.
I actually haven't, actually. I try not to a lot, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating things.
No, because this is something that Lynn and I had talked about. There's like how very cared for we felt. So that's why I was like,
Okay.
you've been listening. Again, like as a woman who looks a certain way, who comes from a certain background, and I feel like a lot of women would be able to empathize with this idea of moving from feeling like an object that somebody's like doing things to you, than feeling that you are an equal part of this whole body and everything is moving together, as opposed to kind of like, here, your furniture, you've got to do this, or
Right.
you know, you got to show your boobs in this one, or you know, you're going to look pathetic in this. Well, it's very different, and because you're being treated differently, what you can bring, what you're allowed, what you're given permission to bring is going to be different. And what we were talking about representation of trans community, it's really no different than any other underrepresented community. You know, you can start as far back as Black representation, going as far back as 1920s, and how that has evolved through the past century, and every other group, you know, it's like from there, whether it's Asian American, whether it's Middle Eastern, whether it happens to be representation of gay men. Think of how much that has changed over the last 40, 50 years. Trans characters, we've gone from being villains or victims.
Right.
Like when you were saying representation, we had that kind of representation.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you have like Dress to Kill.
Right.
Or you have, what is it? Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs. But then you have a movie 30 something years ago called Crying Game. And it kind of like changes this idea of like, oh my God, this trans character. And I feel in that way, we are also making history, not that like we set out to make history, we set out to give human representation to these characters that are usually somebody else's plot point.
Right.
That my character, her life, her journey, her story is important, as opposed to, you know, how does like my character being trans going to move some other character's plot forward to self-realization of whatever the hell they're going to do. And when you read something like that, when you're part of something like that, when people care about, this is what the character thinks, this is what they've gone through, this is what they're going to express, and this is how they're going to express it, you feel that what you have to say is important. And that is a privilege, but it's also a privilege that comes with a responsibility. Then part of our rehearsal became all of us, is this authentic? Are these people fully lived in people? Like, can you imagine being friends with these people, as opposed to you watch a movie, you're like, is everyone in this movie special? Like, doesn't anybody think or feel like human beings? But that's this movie, and why I feel very proud of it. I feel that this is going to be a significant movie, and it's going to put some sort of a blueprint for a whole lot of other queer or underrepresented ethnicities to have a stake in how they want to represent themselves, because they no longer have to be somebody else's sidekick. And that changes the story and how you approach it. And this was definitely that.
And it changes your whole experience with the film, even as a viewer. And Mari, as you co-wrote this and directed, you know, one of the things that I thought was so beautifully moving throughout, as you said, you take these lovely people and you ruin their lives.
Yeah.
But a lot of times there is this relationship that has a history, and how we each negotiate our histories and the choices that we make throughout those, and how they affect the relationships, and letting both of them just evolve in completely different places in their lives, but still be able to be connected because they shared a history when they were younger. And so many of us, you know, have that. And you wonder, like, how do we get to these different places, and we made these different choices, and we hurt each other, and we're kind of cruel to each other, but we love each other. We're able to love each other at the same time. How did that evolve for you writing this? Did just come pouring out, or did you kind of know where we were going?
I think I had an end game in mind. I think part of the other impetus for it was kind of this question of like, what are the lines that I feel like have been redrawn for myself as I transitioned. And I, you know, was like, what are the things that would still like challenge me as a woman out in public, as a woman, like what, you know, and I think that like the question of like this particular scenario kind of came up, and I was like, I would be bothered by that personally. And then I was like, well, that is interesting. And usually if something challenges me or really makes me think, that's a story and a thread that I want to, you know, pursue. And then sort of throughout the process of the film, I think that those questions and those thoughts and feelings were asked a lot. I mean, I think throughout the entire filming, particularly in the script, because Kristen and I have known each other since 5th grade.
Okay.
So we have a very long history together, that I think also kind of informed the characters. Not that we've had conflicts like this, but just that we understood each other and our own histories so well that we were able to sort of think like, okay, how would we approach this situation, you know? And I think that you know, there's a little bit of both of us in both of these characters. And then as we got towards, you know, the filming process, I mean, Pooya and Lynn just took the characters and just ran with it. Whatever we crawled with, they ran with. And the process of the rehearsal process wasn't like our typical rehearsal process. A lot of it was discussions about the characters, their histories. Pooya and Lynn built their own histories out for, you know, what happened in college, and Kristen and I had written several pages of like backstory, and hopefully that was helpful and not just insane nonsense that I was spouting out as I was on a road trip recording myself just trying to talk about the characters. But it was just it was a beautiful organic process, I think, with everybody involved. You know, I think everybody kind of brought their own piece of the puzzle, and as I look at the film, I can see everybody's contributions to it and how much they all elevated it, you know.
And Pooya, I will just kind of building on that. You and Lynn have such a chemistry, and it just you really do come through. It's like these people have known each other for so long, and you can see it in each of your faces, how you play off of each other. What was it like working together and kind of through this process?
I think it came down to one very basic question. What makes a sad movie sad, or, you know, a relationship? Why do we cheer? Like, if if we see those characters not caring about what they're talking about or the situation they're in, why would the audience care?
Yeah.
And we realized the only way that we're going to get to the audience to the end of this movie and them having very strong feelings is if they can see what was special between these characters when they were together. And you don't talk about what exactly it was. So Lynn and I had to really find out, well, what was it that was so special that makes somebody come after 15 years? You know, you don't do that to just anybody. Also, obviously, you know, it's like my character, like this was a very special person. I've only dated one person since then. So you had to be able to feel this. Like you're saying, you had to be able to sense it and smell it when they look at each other, because otherwise, why on earth would you care? You know, it's like sometimes you see a character getting killed in a movie and you're like, thank God. And like the kid, that's supposed to be a sad moment.
Right.
The movie is telling you, the music is telling you, but you're like, do I really care this person? I don't. And that was my thing. I'm like, I don't want somebody to be watching this and being like, so what, they broke up?
Right.
Who really did, like, and so we came up, Lynn and I came up with very detailed stuff. For me, like music is a huge thing. So I wanted to find the music that they used to listen to. And I made quite an ass out of myself in rehearsal. As yes, thank God there isn't footage of me, you know, dancing to Rick Astley in the background. Actually, there probably is. But Lynn and I wanted to find the tender side of this relationship so that then the audience would care about the aftermath. And Lynn, who I'm so sad that she can't be here today, we built this love kind of like brick by brick. After rehearsal, we'd be texting each other like, I think this is what they liked, or I think this is where they were, or like on her 29th birthday, I think like this is what we did. And also this production, all of these amazing people gave us the time, gave us the space for us to be able to explore that together. And that's what people see. That's the chemistry people see, because you know, sometimes you just see somebody and you're like, sure, but this is not a sexual chemistry. This is chemistry that is built on shared experience, and that you can't, it's not just a chemical thing. But you're right, when I see some of the scenes, like when these characters look, you can tell that that look has meaning, it has weight, it has history in something specific, even though you don't know what that is, but you can feel it. And that's why you care when they hurt each other.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, why would you care?
I know. And
It's
you
like
find
a character dying and you're like, do I care? I don't know if I care.
I know. I was watching and I'm like, don't say it. Don't say it. Don't. I don't know. I wanted to yell at the screen, like, just stop.
You're both lovely. No.
It's just like, just go have a drink. but you allow them to have that moment that they needed to have. And it's just and that you can work through those moments together and still come through intact, and it's just but I was right there with you. I was like, no.
Yeah, I think that was something that Lynn said at some point. I think it was during like our first like read through, and it was like right around the time when she really, you know, like they get into, you know, the final scene, and she was like, I feel immediately bad saying that. And I was like, exactly. Like,
Right.
you know, it's just those things that we do when we're with people that we care about or we love, you know, that damage can be more hurtful because of that history, you know, and that understanding of it.
There's one of the things that you kind of weave through, as you know, through the film is the role of art, and the role of art in our lives and what it means, how it defines us or kind of shapes us and then not. Tell me a little bit about how intentional, kind of where you took, you know, it was very specific to pick performance art, and tell us a little bit about kind of your how you kind of wove that through to kind of really let us know, particularly where Naomi is in her life.
Yeah, part of that was based off of Laura Salmon, our performance artist consultant, is a dear friend of mine, and she was actually out in Claremont, California, doing performance art. And so I was traveling a lot out there, and that setting sort of really inspired the characters, and then the performance art started inspiring Naomi. And I think part of that was that performance art is such a physical manifestation of art. Sometimes painting on film can be, I mean, we paint in the film, but like painting on film can be very difficult to like capture the essence of, or writing. I felt like I wanted something physical. I also felt like Naomi would be somebody who needed something physical, like she needed an outlet to just express herself. But at the same time, losing that ability to express that art can be very crippling for people that rely on it to be able to, process events in their lives. And I felt like it would just be very tragic in its own way to watch somebody who clearly loved their art so much to really self-inhibit oneself, as I think people tend to do, especially, as we grow older and we, process events differently, and we reprioritize and we try to choose what matters. And I think a lot of those questions that Kristen and I were having at the time were kind of floating into that realm of Naomi, and what performance art was and how much it meant to her. And then it was just really fun watching that evolution of that performance, because as we wrote it in the script, was really very different from the way that we portrayed it in the film at the end. It was a lot more painting, a lot more meditative than it originally was. So it was just exciting. Yeah.
And then Pooya, so much of this film, we're watching both Naomi and Kris talk about what it is like to be a woman. What does womanhood mean? What does motherhood mean? Does it mean anything? and it can mean, various things to various people. How, as you're exploring those themes as a performer, kind of how are you preparing? There's a lot that you cover in a night. There's a lot of ground that you cover, and how do you approach that as a performer? Knowing, those are some weighty themes, and given the freedom to talk about, how we all define ourselves, how you define yourself. Naomi and Kris define themselves as women, and different choices that each of them is able to make at this point in their lives.
I feel, it's like you kind of try to realize, what does that particular thing mean to the character? And then try to find the parallel within yourself. Like, do I feel that way about motherhood personally? Maybe not quite that way, but there are other things in life that, like, I wish it had been this way, or I wish it had worked out that way. And as I always say, like, whenever I play a character, I want to do the character justice. Even if I'm playing a villain, to be able to show the full humanity of a character, and not take them by, well, this character said this, as opposed to, well, this character said this because this is what had happened, and this is their reaction to it, and this is how they ended up here. And also something that I fully believe in, that trans people and trans men and trans women, maybe more specifically trans women, they can understand exactly what cis women go through, because of these external standards that are put on you, which tells you, if you do this, you are, like, check mark, yes, you are a woman. If you do that, then you're not. If you have a child, you're a full woman. If you pass in a cis hetero way, then you can be considered trans woman. And if you go through the check mark, it's like this very strange parallel, which is why I always talk about the fact that what trans women and cis women want is very much the same. We want to be seen as we see ourselves. We want to be respected accordingly, and we want to be an equal member of society without somebody else telling us what it is we need to do to be valid.
Right.
And you know, I mean, I'm an immigrant. I'm a divorced woman. I'm a woman of trans experience. I'm an actor of color trying to make it in this business. So all of those things, bringing all of those things to Kris, Kris trying to find herself, Kris trying to find herself based on other people's criteria, and then how that evolves. It wasn't as far off as one would think. You know, it's kind of like the structure is the same. Now, maybe tiny details here and there are things that you need to tweak. But other than that, I could find myself in Kris. And then there were some external things that I was very adamant. And I remember Marie and I and Kristen also talking about, because when I first went to LA for the chemistry reads, I was like, I think I look too glamorous for this character. And it wasn't because I felt that the character is ugly or anything. I'm like, this is somebody who has only dated one person in the last 10 years. This is somebody who's definitely an introvert and kind of has this fear of the outside world for obvious reasons. So this is not like, you know, some hot happening mama. And, you know, sometimes when you watch something, you're like, I get what this character is saying, but with the way this character is presenting themselves, what is coming out of their mouth like does not correlate.
Yeah.
It's like the character who's supposed to feel very insecure about the way they look, but they're like a heartthrob. You're like, I mean,
Right.
I hear what you're saying, but
I'm not getting there.
so that for me as an actor, that was an interesting challenge that I took on. You know, her haircut, the way she walks, the way she dresses, which of course I started, you know, watching Marie in how she walks and how she talks to people and like how she holds her body. And that was great to have Marie, because I felt like this is kind of where this character is going and how this character is different from me. Because it goes back to, I wanted that character to be authentic. I didn't want it to be some variation of Hollywood saying, these are people who live in New England, but they have perfect tans and they look very LA.
Right. And I'm going to give you some props here for a second, because I have to tell you my favorite scene. There is a scene when Naomi and Kris are leaving the bar and you meet Naomi's colleague who is clearly interested in Kris. And there is just, you can see it in your face. Like, I'm not ready to go there right now and I'm not going to do it. Or maybe I want to, but no, I don't. I could see all that happening. And it was just that moment you just talked about, you know, trans women and cisgender women, where Naomi, as close as they were, couldn't see what was happening in that moment. And it was slightly heartbreaking, but you kind of got it. But I just have to say, it was like, I think one of my most favorite moments in the film, just how you captured that. And I'll just say, you could make an old gay white cisgender man kind of feel that experience.
That's what you get from shooting at 5 a.m.
Yeah, exactly. As the sun's rising and I'm like pouring
like,
sweat, I'm like, oh my God, I see the sun.
The light is coming.
We started doing the dialogue faster, trying to run to the end of the scene.
That's also really the credit to the writing and the team, that when you have the full support, that when somebody talks to you, it makes sense to you. So you can just take that, internalize it, and act, as opposed to somebody giving you a direction, you being like, I have no idea what you mean, or like, it doesn't make sense at all. Like, what is this person doing? But doing that and having everybody be there, and also me having had similar experiences like that. But thank you for saying that. And that was, in a way, it's very specific. In a way, it's very global. It's very every person. You know, being awkward. You like, but you can't touch.
Right. And you're like, maybe tonight, but I don't think tonight.
Like, yeah, no. Thank you, though.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And kind of building on that, Marie, as you're talking about the team and everything, let's go ahead, let's throw out some props for your cinematographer. This
Oh
film,
yeah, of course.
this is beautifully filmed. The framing, I mean, it's the lighting, the framing. I'm going to give you a minute to gush about your crew, your cinematographer. I mean, because all of that is just so beautifully done and helps kind of move the story. So I'm going to give you give it all to them.
Well, I mean, everybody on the crew, it takes a village, all these films, any film. And I was very lucky to have people literally from every part of my life working on this film. Jordan, our cinematographer, Jordan Perrault, was my college roommate.
Okay.
and dear friend, and just, we have that, like, we don't even have to communicate. We just have like the same mind when it comes to cinematography. And so, I'll be like, I'll write down the shot list. Is like, don't worry about it. I know exactly what you want. Don't worry about it. He loves light, and I wanted to give him that moment at the end, really, with the Lightroom, to just really just like run with it and see how far he could push color. And I'm just really just overjoyed with the result, and also the collaboration between him and Tom Wyman, our production designer, who was also just absolutely incredible and a sweetheart and so funny and silly on set, but just a light presence, and also just somebody who really just was able to elevate particularly that room at the end, because we didn't really give him a lot of space to grow out these things, but he added all these little accents to the set and paintings on the wall in the restaurant, and like the globes and the books and the bar. And our producer AD Mia Schulman is incredible. She was my rock on set, along with Tina Carboni, who is our UPM. And I mean, God, just everybody on set, and Danny and Nikon portraying sort of the duality of man that happens in our film. They were kind of our little MVPs coming in and helping on those days where we just kind of shake things up, and it was just such a beautiful process, and all of it obviously couldn't have been done without Pooya and Lynn, because I mean, I don't know, I was watching it in theaters a couple weeks back. And every time I watch it now, I just find a new element of their performances that just, I don't know, inspires me. Because, even all this time later, after really literally editing it alone in my apartment, you think that you'd seen everything,
Right.
But then you go and see it on the big screen and you see all these different intricacies and these little layers, and knowing that history and even like, learning more about what they had discussed together, like, and seeing that stuff evolve on the screen. And I think that's, if people can handle it, I think it's a movie that hopefully can bear fruit with repeated viewings.
I think so. So tell us a little bit. So what is happening with the film? Kind of, I know you're on the festival circuit. So tell us what is next for the film, kind of how are things going?
Yeah, it's going great. We're just full steam ahead with festivals. We're starting sort of our international rollout now, and we were acquired by Breaking Glass Pictures, which is just an amazing collaborator. They're going to be releasing the film on PVOD sometime in the first or second quarter of next year, and then we'll also be doing a theatrical release. All things considered.
Right.
With the world, but I would very much, that'd be pretty neat. So hopefully that through Vanishing Angle, our production company, who's also our theatrical distributor.
Oh, yeah.
And and then Pooya just won an award, the jury award for best performance at Outfest.
Excellent.
Which is
Congratulations.
amazing. Yeah.
I'm actually very proud of that award because it's a genderless award.
Yes.
It's not best female, it's not best male. It's an honor.
Their performer, yes.
Like best performance in US feature film at Outfest, that for this role, I'll never forget that.
Oh, good. And what's next for you? Where will we see you next? Kind of what are you working on?
I'm a New York actor, so theater is an ongoing thing.
Right.
I love collaborating. Again, being a Middle Eastern woman and also being a queer woman, it gives me the opportunity to work with up and coming theater makers, filmmakers, I love that. I'm a self-titled community mama, so whenever I get to be in a place that I get to, one, be supportive of young artists who are making new things that they want to include me in, I love that. And also being able to push better stories, better representation forward, whether it happens to be about a Middle Eastern woman or happens to be a trans woman. I personally don't care one way or another. Even when I'm playing a character that's neither one, but it's a good story and I can show younger actors, younger writers, younger performers that, you know, here I am. I might cry at this moment. I don't know. We'll see how this moment goes right now. But I remember wanting to be an actor 20 something years ago and how nobody had an interest in me. How so many doors closed in my face because I was those things that I still am. Just the world has changed. It hasn't changed on its own. People have gradually, brick by brick, you know, we've had Transparent, we've had Laverne, we've had Pose, you know, all of these things that have happened. Some of those people I know and I respect and I love dearly. And I just want to be one of those people that if I look back on it 30 years from now, I'd be like, you know, Marie and I, we were able to kind of like push this representation thing, you know, maybe like, you know, one step or two steps forward. But I also use this of looking back at queer people from my home country whenever I get an opportunity, because to them, what I have accomplished, that means sometimes I feel it means a lot more to them because they have grown up in a world that has not allowed them to think they are worthy of anything, respect or success or opportunity. And I can tell them, this is where I was, this is where I am. And let it inspire you. Let it show you the path that if you believe in you, then the right people will come along. The right people, you will find your tribe and you will understand this. You know, it's like as a queer individual, for many years, we haven't had good role models. And that is really the most important part of everything that I do. This role has significance for that reason. That win of that award has significance in that way. This movie itself, working with Murray, and I do that. There are a few things coming down the pipeline. I can't talk about them. They're very New York based, New York theater based. Like in this town, when you get to work in a particular theater, that's a significant milestone. That's coming up in January of 2022. I'm filled with gratitude, Craig, to be honest, because I haven't forgotten what it felt like to be a younger me in a world that had no space for me. So the space that has been created by the amazing people around me that have provided me with encouragement and the space to be where I am, including this lovely lady on the call with us. These things are not insignificant to me, each and every single piece. And I just try to return in favor and be there to support them and show the world that we are here, that we can work together, that we can create great things that people will watch, and hopefully, you know, get to a point that when we talk about trans representation, it's no longer something like trans representation. What is that?
Right.
Because it's really human representation, just, you know, one of the multifacets. And if I can be part of that, then that's a life fully lived, both as a human being and as an artist.
I think that's beautifully said. And Mari, as we wrap up our time here, kind of building on what Pooya was just saying, you know, this space that is being created, that you all are creating, as if you could say something to a young trans feminine, trans woman of color who is looking at this film and thinking like you thought, I have to do this, what do you want to say to her?
Just keep going, no matter what. You know, I think that film has a peculiar thing, or the film industry and the arts in general, I think, have a peculiar thing where it's so hard to keep on persevering, but you have to. And the only way that we can continue to get our stories out there is if people just keep on pushing and fighting for it. And none of it's going to be easy. And it's going to be even harder because of, you know, your experiences and how other people perceive them and how other people perceive you. But at the same time, you have stories that are worth telling. You have stories that are interesting. You have a voice that's interesting. Just keep on developing that voice and just keep on fighting, because that's the only way to get it out there. I had to, as my friend Danny said one time about my short swim, he said that it's sort of like, it looked like I got so mad, I just sort of punched through a wall because I was just so mad. I was like, I have to make a movie. I was like, I think that's just what it takes sometimes. It's just that kind of wild, manic, crazy perseverance, and then beautiful things can happen. And here talking to you and just being able to get the film out there and then hopefully inspiring other people. And that's what we all want. We want to just keep on inspiring and create art that inspires and provokes thought and feeling and emotion. And if we could do that even just once, it makes the world just a little bit brighter and better.
I think that's a beautiful place to close. I want to thank Pooya, Mari. Thank you both for joining us. Thank you both for bringing us this story and this film to our audiences. We are very grateful to be able to show it. And I think that, you know, all of our audiences, I think, are going to react as beautifully, I think, as I did. I love this film, and I'm just thrilled to have you both, and thank you both for taking the time to join us. And from all of us here from Out on Film, we thank all of you for joining us and supporting queer voices and queer cinema and queer stories and queer storytellers. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you both.
Thank you all.